I wanted to bring today's episode to the podcast talking all about homocysteine. You may have got your homocysteine tested. Maybe you're finding it's high and now you're going a deep dive trying to figure out what is going on with your fertility. So if you've got diminished ovarian reserve, you've got premature ovarian insufficiency, low AMH, and or high FSH, we need to make sure we're looking at our biomarkers, but also we don't want to then rabbit hole on one particular biomarker and think that there's nothing we can do, or we start chasing that whole sort of that siloed approach. Today, we're talking about homocysteine, why this matters when you're on the fertility journey. And this is for egg health and sperm health. So excited for you to listen to this episode. Let's go. Hey, Katie, excited to have you back on the podcast.
Thanks. Excited to be here.
Awesome. Okay. So today we're going to be talking about homocysteine, which I'm just talking to Katie beforehand here. We're getting a lot more questions on this where, there's a lot of information out there on how to, be able to figure out what's happening with your fertility. You can go down a complete rabbit hole of insanity. DIY only gets you so far. That's why we need to use testing and be able to fast track this. But a lot of questions on homocysteine, and we do genetic testing as part of our Fab Fertile method, and that can really look at your methylation pathways, and then we can then help with homocysteine. But we're going to be talking about what exactly is homocysteine and why, when someone is on the fertility journey, does this even matter? So Katie, what exactly is homocysteine?
Yeah, so homocysteine is it's an amino acid, and it can be derived. It's almost derived as a byproduct during metabolism. So it's involved in a process called methylation, which we'll talk a lot more about during this podcast. But it's involved in a cycle, and if that cycle isn't functioning properly somewhere across the line, then homocysteine can become elevated. Now, homocysteine we want to have some of it because it's good to be recycled. It's efficient and effective at being recycled. But if it's not being recycled effectively, or we're producing too much of it, that's when we might start having some problems. And we're going to chat about that today.
Yeah. So elevated levels, what are some things we're seeing if someone's got an elevated homocysteine?
Yeah, so in the medical world, homocysteine is largely associated with an increased risk of cardiovascular disease and neurological disease. So those would be, I guess, the red flags medically speaking. But actually, homocysteine and indeed the whole methylation process in general is connected to so much more than just that, because methylation, which is a part of the process that homocysteine is produced in, is connected to hormone metabolism. It's connected to energy production. It's connected to neurotransmitter function and detoxification and elimination and DNA transmission. So it's an important process for many systems in the body.
And I guess if it's elevated, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have cardiovascular or neurological disease. That would be like just taking one little piece and then rabbit holing on that one piece, because we were just talking before about, how we look at themes and overall picture. We don't take each part of the body into a silo, because that's a whole outdated model of conventional medicine where they're like, go to the dermatologist, go to the cardiologist, go to the gastroenterologist. And so we need to look at the whole body. Otherwise, we're going to go down a self-diagnosis rabbit hole.
Absolutely, yeah. It's not it's not a diagnostic marker in its own right. It's more the risks that can be associated with elevated homocysteine over time.
Yeah, so let's talk about some factors that can impair homocysteine. What do we see in there?
Did you say factors that can impair homocysteine? Or
like medical conditions, like if you've got cancer, diabetes, like kidney disease, thyroid dysfunction, which we see it across the board, a lot of thyroid dysfunction. Also, not necessarily, diabetes with diminished ovarian reserve or premature ovarian insufficiency. Sometimes pre-diabetes, but a lot of times it's like there's a blood sugar imbalance, and that's what's causing this metabolic chaos and things like that. And so, yeah, anything else with the medical conditions there?
Yeah, so things that can impact homocysteine being metabolized efficiently within that methylation cycle, largely so because it is within methylation, within this wider context of methylation has got 5 different cycles within it, and the homocysteine is produced in the second cycle, which is the methionine cycle. With methylation as a whole, everything that happens upstream of each cycle is the most important part. So, and the top cycle in methylation is the folate cycle. So, folate is really, really important. So, making sure that you are consuming enough of the right kind, that you're absorbing and metabolizing folate efficiently is one of the most important factors for then what happens in the methionine cycle, which can impact homocysteine. Within the methionine cycle, we have it's our B12 is really important. So this is where B12 is recycled and methylated. That has a role. And some of the other B vitamins as well, like B6, and really importantly in that methionine cycle, that methionine to homocysteine is choline. So choline actually allows our body to shortcut homocysteine recycling back into methionine. And so many people are not consuming enough choline or have genetic SNPs, genetic mutations that impair their choline absorption and metabolism. So choline's a really important nutrient for this as well.
That's what we see in our genetic testing. It's quite an inexpensive test to be able to really look at pregnancy outcomes, having a healthy pregnancy, preventing gestational diabetes, preventing preeclampsia, having better, birth outcomes, to be able to do all this stuff in the preconception health period. And it's different from the karyotyping test that you're going to do at your fertility clinic, where they're going to, that's only for 10% of the population, where they're going to say, hey, there's a genetic, abnormality. There's something you need to do that, the two of you, but whatever it is. This is epigenetics, and really what are the diet, lifestyle, and supplement recommendations you can do to support your genes. So maybe you have, a SNP in the methylation cycle that just needs some support with choline or with folate. Obviously, make sure you're not taking any folic acid. That's a synthetic form of folate. Kay and I have done many podcasts on that. You can check out the one on how to select the right prenatal, but you want to make sure it's methylfolate. But sometimes many of us have that MTHFR gene variant, like over 60 to sometimes 80% of people have that. And so you're not able to actually absorb any of those B vitamins properly. Anything else on that, Katie?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, the MTHFR gene, really important. That's the one that lots of people have heard of. But actually, there are lots of genetic variants that can impact this methionine pathway and homocysteine metabolism. But our basics, like our back to basic diet and lifestyle stuff as well, can help or hinder this methionine cycle into the homocysteine being recycled. So things like smoking and exercise and caffeine and alcohol and just having enough veggies in our diet, for example, and enough B vitamins in our diet. This doesn't all have to be supplements, right? Just the basic dietary principles really matter here as well.
Yeah, and sedentary lifestyle, we were just sitting on your butt, which most of us do on one long Zoom call, right? So you're being able to get up and move and do some weight training and resistance training. I've been walking tons, but it went for a while where I wasn't doing proper weights or resistance. So I'm back doing Pilates, which I'm enjoying. I like it. And so really, why is homocysteine important for fertility? This is why we're here. So obviously everything we do, it can be, as we help to improve your reproductive health, it can be applied to anyone on a health journey, but we're here, to improve your health so you can have your baby. So let's just talk about why homocysteine in particular is so important for fertility.
Yeah, so homocysteine, because of its involvement in the methylation cycle as a whole, it can and because of methylation's role in reproductive health, so hormones and the health of our gametes, which is our eggs and sperm, it is, homocysteine can be an indicator of how well those mechanisms are functioning in our body. So when we're thinking about on the male side, then we know, and also then thinking on the flip side of what I just said, is that if homocysteine is there in too much, it's proliferating, then it can be inflammatory, as we said before. So anything inflammatory usually is indicated in those risk factors for cardiovascular disease. So anytime you hear that something is a risk factor for cardiovascular disease, usually we're thinking about inflammation. Inflammation is really bad news for sperm health. It's bad news for our bodies at large, but sperm health in particular. Those little guys are so volatile, they are really susceptible to any kind of damage. They are very, very basic organisms, and they need to be protected. And so if there's inflammation going on, then, and that can be via homocysteine or any other kind of inflammation, then actually that even the production of sperm, the healthy production of sperm, can be disrupted. And so it can impact the production of mature sperm cells, and it can also interfere with the normal development of sperm. So it's about how that sperm is produced and developed, and then in terms of our semen analyses, then what we might see is impaired sperm count or impaired sperm quality.
Yeah, the DNA damage. Like we're always sometimes, the woman is having all this invasive testing. Obviously, if going through IVF, we're the ones that are having more of the hormones with us. But it's so important to look at the full semen analysis panel, I guess, including DNA fragmentation. It's not just, especially if you have recurrent miscarriage, really, even if you don't, like we need to look at all this to make sure that the semen is healthy too. And we've done a podcast on that. It's a myth that, as we age, the health of the man's semen is just totally fine. No, okay, he may be able to father children later in life than women, but we want to make sure those sperm are in the best quality. And if the homocysteine is elevated, this can be impacting the quality, the DNA damage, and really also impair blood vessel function too, and reduce blood flow. So that can be part of it. So let's talk about what are we seeing with females there as homocysteine and ovulation. What are we seeing there?
Yeah. So again, I think just to reiterate the importance here on both the male and the female side is that when we're thinking about early embryonic development, what we're looking at is DNA transmission. So the critical part for a baby to be produced very, very in those early stages when the sperm meets the egg and fertilizes it is reproduction. It's the cell division, and it's the successful transmission and replication of the DNA of both parents. Now, if methylation is involved in that successful transmission of DNA, then we can see how something like elevated homocysteine, could impair that function. So that's the same for both male and female. Now, it is possible. So in terms of some of the research, the having for women and thinking about ovarian and egg health, low being a good thing, low healthy levels of homocysteine might be associated with healthier reproductive processes. So there was a relatively small study, but a study nonetheless of 259 healthy women, and this found that women with healthy homocysteine levels, so low homocysteine levels at the time of ovulation, were about 25% more likely to ovulate regularly than those with elevated homocysteine levels. So that's an interesting finding, that those with high homocysteine were less likely to ovulate in that particular study. And in terms of egg quality, there have been a number of studies looking at this relationship between egg quality and homocysteine levels, not just in the blood, but actually in the follicular fluid as well. So the fluid in the ovarian sac that protects the follicles in developing eggs. And it found that women, again, with healthy homocysteine levels, were more likely to have better egg quality. And then some studies have also found a little bit of a connection. I think it's an area where more research is needed, but between healthy homocysteine levels and genetic integrity of the eggs. And so when we're thinking about genetic integrity of the eggs, then of course, going back to that principle that I spoke about before about cell division and replication and DNA transmission, it's going to impact that embryo's quality and potential to develop successfully.
Yeah, and then homocysteine in pregnancy. What do we see in there with a healthy pregnancy and homocysteine levels?
Yeah, so again, homocysteine, good healthy homocysteine levels have been suggested as a factor contributing to having a healthy pregnancy. So there was a big cohort study done over in your neck of the woods in Canada, Sarah, and it found a significant association between, again, mum's homocysteine levels and multiple aspects of a healthy pregnancy. So, and this was even just with a small increase of homocysteine, like a 5 micromole per litre increase was linked to a 63% increase in the overall risk of pregnancy complications. So quite a stark figure there, that even just a small amount of elevated homocysteine in pregnancy was associated with this quite large, significantly raised risk with pregnancy complications. So yes, we don't want high homocysteine in pregnancy, but what happens in pregnancy is a factor of what's happened before pregnancy. So ideally, we want to be fixing this now, so that you're going into pregnancy as low risk as possible.
Yeah, then high homocysteine levels are also common with Hashimoto's, which we see a lot of people with Hashimoto's disease, so thyroid disease, and then also rheumatoid arthritis, psoriasis. And we see people come to me all the time with these, I've got the low AMH and the high FSH, the diminished ovarian reserve, premature ovarian insufficiency, and oh, by the way, I've got this autoimmune disease, or 4 or 5 years ago, I was diagnosed with Crohn's, or I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, which is a lot more common in women. And then also, what's happened in the last short period of time with autoimmune disease on the rise, and then also with psoriasis, with skin issues. So it's just very common, but not normal. And you're going to go down a complete road of medication and chasing this around in a circle if you follow the conventional medicine model. Obviously, conventional medicine is good if you're need to be saved for a life-threatening acute issue. We're not knocking it that way. But if you've got a chronic disease and if you're on the fertility journey, relying on this to be able to, pump your body full of hormones when all your biomarkers are out of balance and you're rushing off to the clinic, that just doesn't make any sense. Your foundation is weak. It's not going to be able to sustain life. And we see so many people, either they do get pregnant and they have a loss, or they get pregnant and their pregnancy is horrible. Their postpartum period is horrible. The health of their kids aren't that great. So to me, you're in a very powerful position right now to work on your health, get things get things in order. And then if you do need IVF, it's there for you, but it's not, I get the diagnosis of DOR and off you go down a complete, IVF train.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's worth saying as well, coming back to the homocysteine, that homocysteine is a marker of inflammation. And if you've listened to this podcast a while, you would have heard Sarah and myself and all the other guests that you have on talking about inflammation as a recurrent theme that comes up time and time again. And inflammation is not only a risk factor for cardiovascular disease, it impacts every system in the body. That includes the brain, right? Neuroinflammation will impact your mood, for example, right? And so we know, I mean, it's horrible trying to get pregnant and desperately wanting a baby and it not happening. But we also know that all of these physiological factors, like long-term inflammation, that's going to further impact things like your mood and your lived experience as well. And it's going to be a risk factor for some of the things like autoimmune disease that you just mentioned. It's a risk factor for just like pain and lethargy and like aching joints and all of those kind of things that impact your day-to-day life. So it's really, if you have any of those things, if you've got mood disorders, if you've got pain, if you've got infertility generally, then it's worth looking at inflammation more seriously and thinking about where in your life there could be inflammation creeping in, because methylation that we've spoken about today is a really significant pathway, but it's impacted by so much. It's impacted by everything that we're putting into our bodies, and the way that we're thinking, feeling, and behaving, because our even our thought patterns can impact our neurotransmitter pathways, which can feed into methylation as well. So it's, as you said at the start, Sarah, it's a whole body approach, and it's not just thinking, oh, I've got high homocysteine, what do I do about it? It's thinking, if you do have high homocysteine, that's almost like a high level instruction from your body, like, hey, these are alarm bells going off. And it's not, oh, how do I reduce homocysteine? It's how do I approach my body as a whole being that deserves to be treated as well as possible.
Yeah, and the good news is there's things you can do to right the ship. Like, I got people coming to me telling me they have either they feel okay, but they're not able to have their child. Like, they're struggling with that piece, but they don't feel unwell. They're like, I feel healthy. Or I have people telling me, my health sucks. I am struggling here. I haven't felt well in years. So if you're one of the ones that feel healthy, then some of your bio, that was me, everything, I felt fine, but my period was going away. My skin was having problems. My weird rashes on my skin and things like that. Years later, all these other health issues. So it's not about just propping yourself up with taking antibiotics or taking medication, all these things to prop yourself up. Let's look at the whole piece, and then being able to do this in a targeted manner and really get your health in the best possible shape. And do it in a targeted manner. Like we have access to functional lab testing. We ship those tests worldwide. So, there's lots of things we can do. So, which is empowering, right? We don't need to sit back and let's wait to be able to get into the fertility clinic because they've got you on a wait list for 2 months or maybe a year or whatever it is. No, we don't need to wait for that. We can take action now. Okay, so let's talk about some action steps we can do right now. We get our blood work back. We see the homocysteine is high. Let's talk about some strategies. What are we seeing there, Katie?
Yeah, so I think first of all is diet, and some of the dietary things, as I said, within these cycles, these biochemical cycles that homocysteine is a part of and methylation is a part of, we really need to make sure that we've got enough of those cofactors going in. So I mentioned earlier the importance of folate. So folate in the diet comes from the Latin word for foliage. So really anything green and leafy is going to be your friend when it comes to increasing folate. But actually, it's not just your green leafies, it's any plant food. Anything that grew from the ground is going to have some folate in it. And that includes all of your vegetables, but also things like beans and pulses and legumes as well have got a nice amount of folate in. So, really just thinking about how many plant foods am I eating? How many more could I get into my diet? Because they're not just going to give you folate, they're going to give you fiber, they're going to give you antioxidants, they're going to give you so much. So really focusing on the amount of plant foods that you've got going into your diet is number one. B vitamins. So all of these are B vitamins. Folate is vitamin B9, but all of the B vitamins are important for methylation. Within the methionine cycle, which homocysteine is involved in, B12, I mentioned earlier, is particularly important. And really with the rest of the B vitamins that aren't folate, the key is animal products. So folate is plant products, and the other B vitamins, including B6, B12, and choline, which is arguably a B vitamin, are animal produce. So that would be thinking about anything that was alive once upon a time. So, fish, poultry, beef, and particularly dense forms of your B vitamins. The richest forms of B vitamins are organ meats. So going kind of back to the old school in thinking about that nose to tail way of eating, and if you can stomach it, or there's so many ways to get organ meats now without just eating frying up some liver. There are nice ways to do that, but you could freeze some liver and grate it into dishes like a bolognese or something like that, so you just don't notice it. You can even buy liver capsules, so it's easier than ever to get some of these foods into your diet. So animal produce basically would be your vitamin B12. Eggs do contain vitamin B12 as well, and dairy contains a little. You can get fortified foods like cereal that contain vitamin B12. I'd be more wary of those. They're not as easily absorbed. So if your cereal box is saying rich in B12, just don't know that it's not naturally rich in B12, put it that way. It's been put in a synthetic form, and we don't know the quality of those synthetic forms. So just be mindful of that. But those would be the main sources. You will note that all of those animal produce mean that if you are following a vegan diet, because you can be vegetarian and still get some B12 from eggs and dairy, but if you are following a wholly plant-based or vegan diet, you will not be getting any B12 in your diet unless you're eating a ton of those fortified cereals, which that's going to cause you problems. So if you are vegan, maybe that's going to take some consideration in terms of your dietary intake. We don't necessarily advocate a vegan diet here, but definitely thinking about supplementing B12 if you are vegan, because you're not going to be getting it into your diet properly. And then choline. So choline, again, it's a B vitamin like substance. So some people consider it a B vitamin and some don't. The best sources of choline are, again, organ meats and eggs. So getting enough choline is essential. And I tell you, the amount of people, I run these genetic panels all the time, and the amount of people that I see coming through my doors who are struggling with infertility or miscarriage across the board, who have SNPs on their choline, genetic mutations on their choline pathways, is unbelievable. It's almost everyone that I see coming through my doors. So, eating eggs is a really, really good way to get some choline in, and possibly supplementing as well.
Yeah, just back to the vegan thing. So we're never going to force anyone to eat meat. My parents have been vegans for 35 years, but I do like the body does. If we're not getting everything we can from our diet, we need to supplement. And a lot of us do need to supplement because of our, the quality of our soil. But that diet is actually missing, B12, which you need to then take as a supplement. So we're going to look to make sure you're getting enough protein on your blood work. We're never going to force anyone to eat meat, but we want you to be able to have an open mind about this. Obviously, for religious reasons, certain people aren't able to consume certain meat, so we're never going to force you. But we need to make sure that you're getting the right nutrients in your body to be able to sustain life. And so it's really important then to be able to look at your blood work so we can then, tailor the diet for you. And yeah, with that genetic piece, with that, we see people's those methylation pathways impaired all the time. And so it's being able to then support it with choline, with the methylated folate, whatever, be able to provide support to what you're currently doing. And then also sometimes people are taking a whole bunch of eggs because they're like, you know what, I know I have, there's lots of choline in there. I need the choline, but then people are intolerant. Many times people, this is the top allergen, eggs. People can be intolerant to the whites, and then you're causing more inflammation to your body. So again, it is a nuanced discussion. And you want to make sure if you're doing like 5 eggs a day because you're trying to get all your choline, but maybe you're intolerant to something, it's causing inflammation. And then that's why your body's under attack. So it is taking that personalized approach and not, again, I'm feeling like a broken record, but the DIY only gets you so far, right? You're obviously listening to this podcast here, but, testing can really help you figure this out. Also for the homocysteine levels, so we like that between 6 to 7.2 UMOL per liter. And then also for B12, a lot of times, sometimes people are like the B12 can be, we might think we see it elevated too. When it's elevated, it doesn't always necessarily mean it's high. Sometimes they can be low because you're not absorbing it. What are you seeing there with the B12? Because we do see a lot of people with deficiency, or like we saw something the other day at 2,000. It should be between 600 to 800. What are you seeing there with B12, Katie?
Yeah, really good question. I think B12 in the blood is a funny one because there are different ways to measure B12 in the blood. So you can get serum B12 or active B12, and so active B12 is a more reliable marker. Even then, sometimes it can be elevated if it's not absorbing, if you're not absorbing B12 so well into your cells. Sometimes it can be high because so B12 does ideally B12 needs a couple of weeks to come out of your bloodstream before you blood test. So sometimes if you're taking it as a supplement, it can come up as elevated in the blood work. Sometimes it can be sometimes, again, not to get too technical, but sometimes within the methylation cycle that I just spoke about, if you remember the thing that I said about there being 5 cycles with the top cycle being folate, if someone is having, because a lot of supplements that contain a B complex or multivitamins that contain B vitamins have really, really high levels of B12 in them, super high. And what can happen then is anywhere within our methylation cycles, we need everything in balance, and so we need enough of the right things. And so if someone has too much vitamin B12 going in and not enough folate going in, then it can all start to pool and to bottleneck, right? And so making sure that you're looking at your supplements, if you are taking supplements, probably best done under the guidance of a practitioner that knows what they're talking about, that making sure that you're taking a supplement that's got sufficient levels of folate and the B12, not just super high levels of B12 and not much folate, because otherwise you're going to throw everything off balance.
And so, yeah, with that, let's talk about some supplementation. What are we seeing there to supplement? So, if again, we don't want to do this in a siloed approach. Hey, my homocysteine is high. Let's take these supplements. But what are some foundational supplements to look at, and then after that, we've got to use some testing to be able to take a target approach. What are you seeing there?
Yeah, so I think any one of the vitamins, nutrients that I just mentioned, are going to be fairly good to take in supplement form. So a B complex, any prenatal, should contain good levels of folate, of B6, of B12. Of choline, ideally as well. And then, so things like omega-3. So omega-3 is anti-inflammatory. We've done a whole podcast on omega-3, so do go back and listen to that. So when we're thinking about targeting inflammation, then omega-3 is a really nice option for that. NAC as well, so N-acetylcysteine is a great supplement for fertility generally. I'm fairly sure we've done a podcast on that. I can't remember now, but it's,
I don't think in that one in particular, but we've mentioned
not that one.
many times.
Yeah, we've mentioned it plenty. Yeah. So NAC is, again, if we're thinking about our methylation cycles, a part of one of the cycles further downstream is about our detoxification and our ability to counter oxidative stress and also to eliminate effectively. Now, one of the key ingredients in countering oxidative stress is glutathione. Lots of people have got, again, genetic SNPs on their glutathione pathways. Lots of people just aren't giving their bodies enough of the raw materials to produce glutathione, which is this master antioxidant. And NAC is one of those raw ingredients 4-glutathione. So it's involved indirectly within this methylation cycle. And so NAC is a really great one to support our body at large, our liver. It's well researched in miscarriage reduction, miscarriage risk reduction. So NAC is a pretty good supplement to take as well.
Awesome. So definitely, first of all, get your levels checked so you can see what's been happening here, right? And it's not, we don't just get the AMH and the FSH and then think we're doomed and we've got to go to donor eggs, or we have to rush to an aggressive IVF with all this medication, or a mini IVF, all these pieces, right? We've got to work on our health. I feel like a broken record on that one, but this is what we've been talking about in this podcast for we're coming up to almost 7 years, talking about functional medicine, functional nutrition, what we can do right now when we take our health in our own hands and improve our preconception health. So to me, you're in a very powerful position to take control of that. Any final thoughts here for us, Katie, on homocysteine? When we get it, we have that level. Any final thoughts for us?
Yeah, I guess it's just to say, like with anything else, testing is really important, but dwelling on one specific marker is not helpful. So if you just got your homocysteine tested as a standalone, it's not really going to tell us that much, and at Fab Fertile, it's looking at the overall picture. So you would have your full case history taken, mapped out all of the symptoms in your body, even things that you might not have thought about as being significant, and then tying that in with comprehensive labs, so comprehensive blood work. And that way we can start to pick out the key themes, because otherwise, I know what a lot of fertility people are like, and I know what a lot of listeners here probably are like, because if you're listening, then you're researching, right? And so if you're researching, great, because you're trying to understand your body better and trying to be empowered and take control, which is amazing. But the downside is that you can end up, and we see this, don't we, a lot of people who are on these huge lists of supplements, and it's like, okay, why are you taking that? Well, I heard a podcast on that and they said this. I read this and they said that. I heard this in a forum. My friend told me this. And so that you run the risk of just trying to do everything, and actually that's not helpful, because we need to be targeted in what is going on for you. So infertility is different for everyone's underlying causes are different, any imbalances in any one person's body are different. So homocysteine is a part of that picture, but we need to work that up more broadly, and understand you and your partner if relevant, and how you fit together, and what can be done for you guys as individuals.
Yeah, and that's about, in the allopathic world, of where we're like, oh, here's a diagnosis and here's your pill. So we don't do that here. We're looking at the whole picture. We're always looking at themes and the foundation stuff. What you're like, ooh, this is not pretty, because sometimes people are like, just give me a magic pill for this. What do I need to do? But we got to work on your sleep. We got to dig into the diet. You hanging out and having a big bag of chips every day. Yes, I've been there, having a big bag of chips every day, or pounding down, you got to run to the door. You're drinking alcohol. Not to say, this is not about some sort of deprivation thing where you sit in a corner where everybody else goes on seemingly having a fun life and you are sitting here drinking green juice. No, it's eating a diet that's right for you, getting the proper rest, taking that pressure off yourself, because, once we turn a certain age, they tell us over 40, our fertility falls off a cliff and we're going to, be doomed. It's working on our being able to visualize a positive path forward, setting boundaries, a boundary word, but being able to, and then movement that's right for you, all those foundational pillars. And then we tweak it along with supplements and other targeted approaches. So then we can, get your body in shape and ready to be able to, boosting up your immune system, getting your body to be able to get pregnant, sustain a pregnancy, and have a great birth. So thanks again, Katie. And thank you everyone for listening. Take care.
Thank you.